As humans, we tend to hold a special significance to the outliers, the oldest, the biggest, the fastest, the heaviest. Trees have the distinction of being some of the oldest and biggest organisms on Earth, and they can hold a special place in our hearts. So this is a story about trees. In 1994, American hard rock band Freak of Nature released their second and, as it would turn out, last full studio album. It was titled Gathering of Freaks, and it would become one of my teenage self's favourite albums. I don't think I've listened to that album for well over 20 years, but a few days ago one of the songs just popped into my head. You may be wondering, if you're still actually watching this video at this point, why am I telling you about a 90s rock band? I thought this was about trees. Well, I want to draw your attention to track number 6 on that album, the song that popped into my head decades after I last listened to it. The track is called The Tree. It tells a story from a point of view of a tree as it watches an army of men armed with chainsaws cut down the forest. The chorus goes, "I know they'll never see the beauty in a tree. Just keep on cutting down till there will be no more. Naked to the core, across the open land, every tree would fall to man." Now in the song, the tree gets a kind of poetic justice, as its wood is used to make an electric chair, an implement of death from which the tree exacts its revenge. Perhaps you might think the song is a little overdramatic, but the felling of trees can undoubtedly stir strong emotions. We only have to look at the recent felling of the sycamore tree at Sycamore Gap by Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland. The Sycamore Gap tree was a single sycamore tree planted in the 1800s in a natural dip in the landscape. The tree featured in the 1991 film Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring Kevin Costner. The Northumberland National Park Authority said the site was its most photographed spot. In the late 2016, it was crowned English Tree of the Year in the Woodland Trust's awards. The tree was the site of many marriage proposals. People have scattered the ashes of their loved ones there. It was an iconic tree, a symbol of the north of England. And yet, on the morning of 28th of September 2023, it was discovered that the tree had been deliberately cut down. A police investigation was launched, and despite some arrests being made, the reasons why this iconic tree was felled are still unclear. The loss of the Sycamore Gap tree was keenly felt by the local community, and there was an outpouring of grief and anger at its loss. But it's not the only iconic tree to have met an untimely end. In 1964, a graduate student named Donald Curry was studying the climate dynamics of the Little Ice Age using dendrochronology techniques. Dendrochronology being the scientific method of dating tree rings to the exact year they were formed in the tree. These rings can also give the information about the environmental conditions experienced by the tree during their growth. Curry became aware of a grove of bristlecone pines growing near the tree line on Wheeler Peak, the tallest mountain in the Snake Range in White Pine County in Nevada, US. The bristlecone pine is a species of very long-lived trees. These particular trees were growing on the glacial feature that Curry was studying, and he was granted permission by the US Forestry Service to take core samples from the trees so he could date the glacial features. By studying the width of the growth rings, Curry could determine the patterns of bad and good growing seasons in the past. Curry chose a particular tree for no real reason, apart from it seemed to be old enough to cover the date range he was studying. This tree he designated WPN 114, but it was also known by another name, Prometheus. The exact details of what happened next are a little muddy, with more than one account of the story. But it appears that Curry either broke his borer or got it stuck inside of Prometheus. Some accounts say he needed to retrieve his borer, others say he was having trouble reading the rings from the core samples. Either way, Curry requested permission to cut down Prometheus. Permission was granted by the Forestry Service, and so on August 7th, 1964, a crew used chainsaws to cut down the tree. Now Curry was able to study the growth rings of Prometheus, and in doing so he made a startling discovery. He counted over 4,800 annual growth rings. Given that bristlecone pines don't produce growth rings every year, Prometheus was likely close to 5,000 years old. At the time, this made Prometheus the oldest living non-colonial organism on Earth. Now it was dead. The loss of Prometheus caused an uproar in the local community, but on the positive side, this incident brought the bristlecone pine to the world's attention. The felling of Prometheus is believed to have been the trigger that created the Great Basin National Park and brought protection to the other ancient trees growing there. Donald Curry himself went on to have a long and distinguished career, but he never lived down the controversy. In his later life, he refused to be interviewed about the incident, tired of being painted a villain. To be fair to him, he did seem to genuinely believe what he was doing was something that would help science. It is interesting though how the loss of a single tree can stir powerful emotions, but it doesn't seem to scale up when forests are cleared. It's estimated that there are 3 trillion trees on the planet. That's 376 trees for every person. Forests cover just over 4 billion hectares, though that's less than 31% of Earth's land area. Almost 420 million hectares of forest have been lost since the release of the song I told you about at the beginning of this video. 42 million trees are cut down every day. That's 15.3 billion every year. Humans have already destroyed around 46% of all trees on Earth. The good news, such as it is that the rate of deforestation has slowed compared to the previous 2 decades. The tree at Sycamore Gap is not dead. Sycamore trees can regenerate, but it will take 200 years to fully regain what was lost. Older trees have since been found, but Prometheus is lost for good. The value of old-growth forests cannot be understated. New tree planting is great, but young trees simply don't support the same kind of ecosystem and carbon capture as the trees they are replacing, and they won't for perhaps hundreds of years. Thanks for watching.